David was an ordinary man in an extraordinary place. He lived on Outpost 9, a small human colony built on the edge of a distant star system. The colony was not glamorous. It was dusty, loud, and filled with the constant hum of machines. The people who worked there were not heroes. They were miners, engineers, and cleaners. They worked long hours for little pay, dreaming of one day going back to Earth, or maybe finding something better. David was one of them. He worked in maintenance, fixing broken pipes, replacing old filters, and cleaning areas nobody else wanted to touch. His hands were always dirty, his back always hurting, and his boss always shouting. To everyone else, David was just another face in the crowd, replaceable, forgettable, invisible. But even an ordinary man can be standing at the center of something great without knowing it. That day started like any other. The artificial sunlights flickered on, alarms buzzed to wake the workers, and the loudspeaker repeated the daily orders. David pulled on his old jacket and boots, still stained with oil from yesterday's shift. He didn't complain. He was used to this life. But inside, he always felt there was something more, something waiting beyond the walls of Outpost 9. He walked through the colony halls, passing other workers rushing to their duties. Some ignored him, some nodded politely. His boss, a heavy-set man named Clark, barked at him before he could even finish his morning drink. "David, the waste recyclers are jammed again. Get it fixed. And hurry this time." David just nodded. No point arguing. He had learned long ago that Clark only respected results, not excuses. So he grabbed his tools and started another day of thankless work. Hours passed in the same dull rhythm, fixing, cleaning, moving. His body worked, but his mind drifted. He thought of Earth, though he had never seen it. He thought of the stars he sometimes saw through the colony's glass domes. Beautiful, endless stars that made him feel small yet alive. And then the ground shook. It started as a faint vibration, barely noticeable. But within seconds the entire outpost trembled. The lights flickered, alarms blared, and the walls rattled, as if something massive had entered the atmosphere above. David dropped his tools. Around him, workers froze in panic. Through the colony's thin glass windows, streaks of fire cut across the sky. Something was crashing, something not human. A ship. The loudspeakers screamed, "Emergency, all personnel remain indoors. Unknown object approaching Sector 7. People ran for cover, shouting, terrified. Some prayed, others cursed. But David, he didn't move. His heart pounded, his breath quickened, yet his eyes stayed locked on the burning trail in the sky. Moments later, the ground shook again as the object slammed into the rocky desert outside the colony. Dust and fire rose in a massive wave. Even from a distance, David could feel the heat. Everyone else turned away. But David's feet carried him forward, past the shouts, past the warnings, past the barriers. He didn't know why. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was instinct. But something inside him whispered, "Go." He reached the crash site before anyone else. The wreckage was still burning, metal twisted and glowing. Sparks flew into the air like dying stars. And there, trapped inside, the shattered remains was a figure, not human. The skin was pale blue, glowing faintly under the fire's reflection. The robes were torn, but rich with strange patterns. The figure was old, frail, struggling to breathe. An alien elder. David froze. His mind screamed at him to turn back, to wait for security, to save himself. But his heart pulled him forward. He could see the pain in the alien's eyes. Not a monster, not a threat. A living being. A dying one. The fire roared. The metal groaned. David had seconds to decide. He grabbed a broken pipe and forced open the wreckage. The heat burned his skin. The smoke choked his lungs, but he pushed through. He reached the elder, lifted him with shaking arms, and dragged him out of the wreck. They collapsed onto the dusty ground. The elder's eyes glowed brighter for a moment, focusing on David. His lips moved, whispering a word in a language David didn't know. The sound was soft, almost musical, carrying weight and mystery. And then the elder went silent. David sat there coughing, his arms trembling, his clothes singed by fire. Behind him, alarms still wailed and distant voices shouted as security finally arrived. But in that one quiet moment, David realized something. He was no longer invisible. He had just saved the life of an alien elder, and nothing in his ordinary world would ever be the same again. The smoke was heavy. The air was filled with the sharp smell of burning metal and scorched fuel. The wrecked alien ship groaned like a dying beast, its broken engines spitting out sparks and flames. David coughed hard, his throat raw, but he did not let go of the elder. The alien's body was light, fragile, almost weightless in his arms, but every step David took felt heavier than the last. Behind him, voices shouted. The colony guards had finally arrived, their rifles raised, their helmets shining under the artificial lights of the dome. "Step away from the wreck," one of them yelled. "Drop it now," shouted another. But David didn't move. He looked at the elder's face. The alien's eyes glowed faintly, like fading stars, and its chest rose and fell in weak, uneven breaths. The elder was dying. David knew it. He didn't understand why, but he couldn't let this being die here in the dirt alone. He shouted back, his voice breaking. "He's alive. He needs help." The guards hesitated. They weren't trained for this. The manuals never said what to do when a human worker dragged an alien out of a burning ship. For a moment, no one moved. David pulled the elder further away from the fire. His arms screamed in pain, his skin burned from the heat, but he kept going. The elder's hand clutched weakly at his sleeve, as if begging him not to stop. Suddenly, a piece of the ship exploded behind them, throwing hot debris into the air. The guards ducked for cover, shouting orders, but David shielded the elder with his own body. The blast singed his back, the heat unbearable, but somehow he held firm. "Medical. Team," one guard finally called, breaking the silence. "Get a stretcher here." But it was too late. The elder's breathing slowed. His eyes opened wider, locking onto David's. There was no fear in them, no anger, only recognition. The elder raised a trembling hand and touched David's chest right above his heart. His lips moved again, whispering that same word he had spoken before. A word David could not understand but could feel, and then the elder's hand fell limp. The medics rushed in, pulling David back and lifting the alien onto a stretcher. They worked quickly, attaching strange devices, speaking in hushed tones. David staggered, dizzy from smoke, watching helplessly. The guards grabbed his arm. "You! Step aside, you're not authorized to be here." David tried to argue, but his voice was gone, his lungs ached, his mind spun. All he could do was nod as they pushed him back. He sat on the ground, staring at the glowing lights of the medical machines. The elder was still alive, but only barely. The crowd grew. Workers from the colony gathered at a safe distance, whispering, pointing. Some looked at David with surprise. Others shook their heads in disbelief. "Why would he risk his life for that thing?" one muttered. "Crazy human. He'll be fired for sure," said another. "Still, he saved it," someone else whispered. David ignored them. His eyes never left the elder. Something deep inside told him this moment mattered. That whisper, that strange word, it wasn't random. It was meant for him. But why him? He was nobody. The guards and medics finally moved the elder into a secure transport, taking him away under heavy escort. David was left behind, alone, his body aching and his clothes burned. For a long moment, silence fell over the crash site. The fire still burned, the wreck still smoked, but the real storm was yet to come. David stood slowly, his knees weak. His boss, Clark, pushed through the crowd, red-faced and furious. "What the hell were you thinking, David?" Clark shouted. "You disobeyed every safety rule we have. Do you know what this means? You're finished." David tried to answer, but the words caught in his throat. He looked at Clark, then at the wreck, then at the trail of medics carrying the elder away. He wanted to explain, to say that he had to do it, that no one else would. But he knew Clark wouldn't listen. Clark never listened. All David could say was, "I couldn't let him die." Clark shook his head in disgust. "You're done here. Pack your things." The words hit harder than the explosion, fired, just like that. After years of work, after risking his life, after saving someone no one else dared to touch, he was thrown away. But as David walked back through the colony, his head low, something strange happened. People moved aside for him. They looked at him differently, not invisible anymore, not just another worker. And in his mind, the whisper of the elder echoed. That one mysterious word. It refused to leave. David didn't know it yet, but his life had just changed forever. The rescue was only the beginning. The next morning, Outpost 9 buzzed with rumors. Everyone had heard the story, how a lowly maintenance worker had rushed into a burning alien ship and dragged out the elder with his bare hands. Some whispered in admiration, others laughed, calling it foolish. But all agreed on one thing: David was no longer invisible. David himself sat quietly in the corner of the mess hall, staring at a cup of cold coffee. His body still hurt from the burns, his throat still ached from the smoke. Yet what weighed heavier than the pain was the silence. The elder's voice, that one strange word, still echoed in his mind. It refused to fade. But before David could think too deeply, his boss appeared. Clark's heavy boots thudded across the floor and his angry voice carried like thunder. David. Office. Now. The workers went silent. All eyes followed as David stood slowly and walked after Clark. He already knew what was coming. Inside the small office, Clark slammed the door shut. His face was red, his hands clenched. He pointed at David like an executioner passing judgment. You're fired. The words were sharp, cold, final. David blinked, his stomach sinking. Fired. I saved a life. Doesn't that count for something? Clark's laugh was bitter. Count for something? You broke protocol. You risked company property. Do you have any idea how much damage that wreck did to our outer perimeter? Do you have any idea how much the cleanup will cost? You think you're a hero, but you're a liability. David swallowed hard. He wanted to argue, to scream that life was worth more than metal and credits, but Clark's eyes made it clear. Nothing David said would matter. Clear your station, Clark growled. You've got until the end of the day. David stepped back into the hall, his chest heavy. Workers watched him in silence. Some looked away, afraid to be seen. A few gave him quiet nods of respect, but no one spoke aloud. In Outpost 9, the company's word was law. By the time David packed his things, the elder's rescue was already fading into gossip. To the company, he was just another worker gone. Replaceable. Forgettable again. At least that's what he thought. That night, David walked alone through the empty colony streets. Neon signs flickered, machines hummed, and the sky above showed only a faint glimpse of the stars through the thick dome glass. He carried a small bag with his few belongings, tools, a notebook, and a picture of Earth he had never visited. He felt lost. Saving a life had cost him his own. But as he walked, a strange sensation stirred, a warmth in his chest spreading slowly through his body. He stopped, pressing a hand against his shirt. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from something else, something foreign. Whispers filled his head, faint but clear, not in English, not in any human tongue. Yet somehow he understood fragments. Images flickered in his mind, stars, symbols, voices not his own. He staggered against a wall, breathing hard. The word the elder had spoken returned, echoing louder than before. Protector. Before he could make sense of it, he noticed movement in the shadows. Two figures stepped out from the alley. Not guards, not workers. Their faces were hidden by masks, their clothes dark and unmarked. David Miller? One of them asked, voice cold. David froze. Yes? The second figure stepped closer, eyes glowing faintly behind the mask. You've been chosen. David's pulse quickened. Chosen where for what? Neither answered. Instead, they slipped something into his hand, a small metallic object, smooth and warm to the touch. It pulsed faintly with light, almost alive. When the time comes, you'll know, the first figure said. Do not let it fall into the wrong hands. Before David could respond, the figures vanished back into the shadows, leaving him alone with the object. Confused, he turned it over in his hand. It looked like a piece of alien technology, etched with symbols he somehow recognized but could not explain. His mind filled with questions. Was this connected to the Elder? To the word whispered in his ear? And why him? Out of all the people. On Outpost 9, why had fate chosen an ordinary worker? Back in his small quarters, David placed the device on the table. He stared at it for hours, unable to sleep. The glow of the object seemed to match the beat of his heart. The whispers in his mind grew clearer, almost guiding him, almost calling him. He realized then that being fired might not be the end. It might be the beginning. The company saw him as worthless. But something greater had seen him, chosen him, marked him. The Elder's life had been saved. But in doing so, David's own life had been changed forever. He just didn't know yet whether it was a reward or a punishment. David woke before the alarms. For the first time in years, he hadn't needed the colony's buzzing loudspeakers to drag him out of bed. His eyes snapped open, alert, wide, as though he had never fallen asleep at all. But when he sat up, something felt different. His small room looked the same, metal walls, flickering lights, the hum of the life support systems. Yet his body didn't feel like his own. He stretched his arms, expecting the usual ache from long days of hard labor, but there was no pain. His muscles felt stronger, lighter, sharper, as if someone had oiled the rusty machine that was his body. He clenched his fists. His grip was firmer, his heartbeat steadier. And then came the voice. It wasn't outside. It was inside, a faint whisper like wind moving through a canyon. Words in a language he didn't know, yet somehow understood. The voice was calm, deep, patient. Protector. The same word the Elder had spoken. David staggered to the mirror. His reflection looked back. Messy hair, tired eyes, scar on his chin. But there was something else now. His pupils shimmered faintly just for a second like a flash of distant stars. He splashed water on his face, shaking his head. Get a grip, David. You're tired. You're imagining things. But he wasn't imagining. The whispers came again. Not just sounds this time, but images. A field of glowing crystals. Towers of silver rising under two suns. A sea of stars stretching forever. Places no human had ever seen, but David saw them as if he had walked there himself. He pressed a hand, to his temple dizzy. What is happening to me? Later that day, as he packed the last of his belongings to leave Outpost 9, he discovered something even stranger. His old tools, rusted wrenches, cracked scanners, sat in the corner. Out of habit, he picked up a broken scanner, a device that hadn't worked in months. The moment his fingers touched it, the scanner blinked to life. The screen glowed, the circuits hummed. David hadn't pressed any buttons, he hadn't fixed a thing. Yet somehow it worked. His hands shook. No, this isn't possible. But it was real. His touch had woken dead machinery. He tried another, an old communication pad with fried circuits. Again, the same result. The pad lit up, working perfectly as if brand new. David dropped it in shock. Something was inside him. Something alien. As he stepped outside, the colony felt different too. Every sound sharper. Every movement clearer. He could hear conversations across the street. Whispers between workers that should have been lost in the noise. He could sense the vibration of the heavy mining drills even before they rumbled to life. He walked through the halls, passing people who had once ignored him. But now, without knowing why, he could feel them. Their anger, their fear, their doubts. It was like the emotions of others brushed against his skin. He froze when Clark, his boss, appeared from around a corner. The man was barking orders as usual, red-faced and loud. But David no longer just heard him. He felt him, pride, greed, and underneath it all, a flicker of fear. Fear of David. Clark caught his stare and frowned. For the first time, the boss's voice dropped. He muttered, "Stay out of trouble, Miller." And then he walked away faster than usual. David's chest tightened. If even Clark, who had always seen him as worthless, now looked at him differently, then something had truly changed. That night, David returned to his quarters. He sat at the small table where the strange alien device still rested. It pulsed faintly like a heart. When he touched it, warmth spread through him again, stronger this time. The whispers grew louder. He saw visions, battles fought in the stars, great ships locked in fire, entire worlds at risk. And always at the center of it, he saw himself. Not as David the worker, not as David the failure, but as David the protector. The device suddenly shifted in his hand, unfolding like a flower. A beam of light projected into the air, forming strange alien symbols. His heart raced, yet he understood them. Somehow the knowledge was already inside him. But then, darkness. The light snapped away. A cold chill filled the room. Outside, shadows moved across the colony walls, figures watching. Not human. David rushed to the window. Shapes lingered near the edge of the dome, tall and cloaked, with eyes that burned like coals. They didn't move closer. They didn't attack. They only watched. He stumbled back from the glass, breathing hard. He knew what this meant. The whispers had warned him. Others knew. Others wanted what he had been given. He sat in silence, his fists tight, his breath uneven. His life was no longer his own. He wasn't ordinary. He wasn't safe. The Elder's choice had marked him. His body was changing. His mind was changing. And David realized the truth. Saving that alien had not been the end of his problems. It was the beginning of a war. Days passed since the crash, but David could not shake the feeling of being watched. Even in the crowded colony streets, he felt the weight of invisible eyes. At night, shadows moved across his walls, and whispers filled his dreams. The alien, word protector, never left his mind. He tried to live quietly. He avoided trouble, stayed away from the guards, and kept the strange alien device hidden. But his body continued to change. His senses sharpened more each day. Machines responded to his touch. Languages he had never studied suddenly made sense, and his dreams. His dreams were no longer his own. In them he saw worlds burning, armies clashing in the stars, a chain of voices calling his name. And always, the Elder's glowing eyes staring at him, waiting. One night, the waiting ended. The colony was silent, its lights dimmed for rest hours. David sat at his table, staring at the device, when the air suddenly shifted. A ripple moved across the room like heat rising from stone, and then he was no longer alone. The Elder stood before him. The same pale blue skin, the same glowing eyes, but stronger now, healed. His robes were whole, shining with strange symbols that shifted like liquid. David jumped to his feet. His voice cracked. You're alive." The Elder nodded slowly, his gaze calm but heavy with meaning. He spoke in his language, words that should have been impossible to understand. Yet David understood every syllable. "You pulled me from fire. For that, I owe you more than life." David's chest tightened. "I don't understand. Why me? Why did you give me this?" He gestured to his chest, to the device, to his whole trembling body. The Elder stepped closer. His presence filled the small room like a storm, contained in flesh. "Because you were unseen. Because you were no one." David frowned, confused. "No one?" The Elder's eyes burned brighter. "Great powers look for kings, soldiers, leaders. But it is the unseen hand, the humble heart, that shapes destiny. You risked your life, not for glory, not for gain, but because it was right. That is why you are chosen. That is why you are protector." David sat down slowly, his hands shaking. "Protector? Of what?" The Elder raised a hand. The device on the table glowed in response, unfolding into a sphere of light. Images filled the air. Galaxies, spinning. Fleets of alien ships, worlds teetering on the edge of ruin. David's breath caught in his throat. "There is a war," the elder said, his voice deep and steady. "For centuries, our kind has guarded knowledge too dangerous for others to wield. That knowledge now flows in you. You carry what empires will kill to possess." David stared at the visions. Whole planets burned while monstrous ships blotted out suns, and in the center of it all he saw himself, holding the device, standing against armies. His voice broke. "I'm just a worker. I can't fight a war. I can't even keep a job." The elder leaned closer, his glowing eyes piercing through doubt. "You will learn. You already have. The change inside you is the knowledge awakening. But beware. Others know you exist. They hunt you even now." As if on cue, a loud crash shook the walls. The lights flickered. David and the elder turned toward the door. From outside came the sound of boots. Not colony guards. Too heavy. Too fast. The elder's expression darkened. "They are here." The door burst open, and masked figures stormed in, weapons humming, with alien energy. Their voices hissed through distorted helmets. "Take the human, kill the elder." David's heart raced. He ducked as blasts tore through the room, sparks flying. The elder raised a hand, forming a shield of shimmering light that blocked the attacks. But the effort strained him, his body trembling. "Run!" the elder shouted. David froze. "No, I won't leave you." The elder's shield flickered under the assault. His eyes burned into David's. "Protector, listen. Your path begins tonight. Survive, and you will find me again. Fail, and all is lost." With a surge of will, the elder slammed his hand against the device. It shot out a beam of light wrapping around David like armor. The next instant, David was hurled backward through the wall itself, as if reality had bent to throw him clear. He landed hard in the dusty street outside, coughing, dazed. Behind him, the attackers stormed his quarters, the sound of weapons echoing. When he looked back, the elder was gone. David stumbled to his feet, his body still glowing faintly from the device's energy. His chest heaved, his heart thundered. The words rang in his ears again. Protector. The elder had returned, not to stay, but to awaken him, to push him onto a path he could not escape. Now, hunted by forces he didn't understand, carrying a power he didn't ask for, David realized the truth. He was no longer a worker, no longer invisible. He was the key to something far greater and far more dangerous than he could imagine. The night after the elder vanished, Outpost 9 was never the same. The wreckage of David's quarters was sealed off by security. Workers whispered in fear. Guards patrolled with rifles raised, and the company's officials sent urgent reports back to Earth. Everyone knew something had happened, something dangerous, and at the center of every rumor was David. Some said he had been possessed. Others swore he was working with the aliens. But the truth was simpler and darker. David was being hunted. It started quietly. Strange faces appeared. In the colony, men and women who wore no worker uniforms, who asked too many questions, who paid too much attention to David's old haunts. They watched, waited, always close but never speaking. Then came the mercenaries. They didn't hide. Their armor was black and scarred, their weapons humming with energy, not made by human hands. They moved like predators, scanning the streets, following whispers of the human who touched the elder. David ran. He had no plan, no allies. Only the device still glowing faintly in his pocket, and the strange strength building in his body. On the second night, they cornered him. David was walking through the abandoned tunnels beneath the colony, searching for a way to escape when the lights above flickered and died. The air grew heavy. He felt them before he saw them. Mercenaries moving like shadows, cutting off every exit. One of them stepped forward, his mask glowing red. His voice was metallic, cold. "Hand over the device, human. Do this, and your death will be quick." David's pulse pounded. His back pressed against the wall. He had no weapon, no training. But inside his chest, something stirred. The word echoed in his skull. Protector. His hand moved on instinct, pulling the device from his pocket. It flared to life, projecting a wave of light. The tunnel shook, dust falling from the ceiling. The mercenaries staggered, blinded. David didn't understand how, but his body knew what to do. He dashed forward faster than he had ever moved. He slammed his shoulder into one mercenary, sending him crashing into the wall with unnatural strength. Another swung his blade, but David ducked, rolling across the floor, the device guiding his hands. He wasn't just running anymore. He was fighting back. But the mercenaries were relentless. They regrouped, their weapons firing bursts of searing energy. One blast grazed David's arm, sending pain shooting through his body. He screamed, but the device pulsed, sealing the burn with glowing threads of light. David's eyes widened. This thing is protecting me. But protection wasn't enough. There were too many. He turned and sprinted through the tunnels, his breath ragged, boots pounding against metal floors. The mercenaries chased him, their shouts echoing, like wolves on the hunt. David burst into the open night of Outpost 9. The dome above shimmered under the stars, the alien desert stretching endlessly beyond. He ran through the colony streets, past workers who scattered in fear, past guards who raised weapons but dared not fire. Behind him, the mercenaries tore through the colony, unstoppable. David reached the outer gates, only to find them sealed shut. Panic clawed at him. He was trapped. Then the device pulsed again, brighter than ever. Symbols swirled across its surface. David pressed his hand against the metal gates, and with a roar of energy, they shattered open. Sparks flew, alarms screamed, but David didn't stop. He ran into the desert, into the endless dark with the hunters close behind. Hours blurred together. Sand whipped his face, the cold of night cutting into his skin. But still he ran. The mercenaries followed without rest, their glowing eyes always behind him. At last, David collapsed against a rocky cliff. His lungs burned, his legs trembled. He couldn't run forever. The mercenaries emerged from the shadows, their leader, stepping forward with calm confidence. You cannot escape, human. The knowledge is not yours to keep. Hand it over. David clutched the device, its light flickering weakly now. His body screamed for him to surrender, but deep inside, something refused. He wasn't running for himself anymore. He was running because the Elder had trusted him, because if he gave up, everything would be lost. His voice came out rough but steady. No, you'll have to kill me first. The leader raised his weapon. But before he could fire, the desert shook. A deep rumble echoed through the ground. The mercenaries paused, scanning the sky, and then a ship appeared. Not the wrecked one, a new one. Sleek, silver, silent. It descended with blinding light scattering the mercenaries. David shielded his eyes as the ship landed. A hatch opened, and a figure stepped out. Not human. Not mercenary. The Elder. The mercenaries hissed in fury, their weapons raised again. But the Elder's voice boomed across the desert, filled with command. Enough! The Protector is not yours to claim. The mercenaries hesitated. Fear flickered in their glowing eyes. Slowly, they stepped back, retreating into the shadows, until only David and the Elder remained under the stars. David's knees gave out, his body collapsing into the sand. He gasped, for air, his heart racing. The Elder reached down, lifting him gently. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with urgency. The hunt has begun, David, and it will not end until you are ready. Now you must choose, hide and die hunted, or rise and lead. David looked up at the Elder, the stars burning above them, the device still glowing weakly in his hand. He knew there was no going back. The hunt was only beginning. The desert was quiet after the mercenaries fled. Only the soft hum of the Elder's silver ship filled the night air. David lay in the sand, his chest heaving, his skin still glowing faintly from the device. The stars above seemed brighter, sharper, as though the whole galaxy was watching him. The elder stood over him, calm yet grave. His eyes glowed like burning suns. You are changing, David. The choice is upon you. David struggled to sit up, his body aching from the chase. I don't understand. Why me? I'm not a soldier. I'm not a leader. I'm just... The elder cut him off with a raised hand. You are protector, not because of strength, not because of power, but because of the heart that chose life over fear. That is what the galaxy needs. David stared at the device in his hand. It pulsed softly, like a living heart. His reflection shimmered on its surface, yet he no longer looked like the man he once was. His eyes carried a faint glow. His skin bore faint patterns like hidden veins of light just beneath the surface. He was becoming something else. The elder helped him to his feet. Your world will not believe you. Your people will not understand. But already word spreads. Factions rise. Enemies gather. They will all come for you because inside you lies knowledge that can change the galaxy. David swallowed hard. What kind of knowledge? The elder looked up at the stars. His voice lowered. The kind that can end wars, or start them. The kind that can heal worlds, or destroy them. The kind no one species should ever hold alone. And now it flows in you. Before David could reply, the ship's alarms rang. A holographic screen lit up, showing dozens of red dots moving across the sky. The elder's face hardened. They are coming. Not just mercenaries this time. Fleets, governments, corporations, all seeking the protector. David's heart pounded. So what do I do? Run forever? The elder turned to him, eyes fierce. No, you rise. You become what you were chosen to be. Inside the ship, David was led to a chamber filled with alien light. Symbols carved into the walls glowed as he entered, resonating with the device in his hand. The elder placed a hand on David's shoulder. This is where the transformation completes, but the path is yours to choose. If you accept, you will never return to your old life. If you refuse, you will die hunted, and your people will face the storm without you. David stood in silence, trembling. He thought of his small quarters, his broken tools, his life as an invisible worker. That life was gone. He thought of Clark, his boss, who had fired him like he was nothing. He thought of the elder's eyes, full of trust. And then he thought of the word that had haunted him since the crash. Protector. David stepped forward. I accept. The chamber came alive. Beams of light shot from the walls, wrapping around David. The device lifted from his hands, floating in the air, spinning faster and faster until it merged into his chest. He gasped, his body convulsing, his veins glowing bright. Visions poured into his mind. Galaxies turning, ancient battles, secrets buried in the stars. He saw humans, fragile yet brave, standing beside alien allies. He saw himself, no longer a worker, no longer invisible, but a figure standing tall against the darkness. His scream echoed through the chamber, but it was not a cry of pain. It was a cry of rebirth. When the light faded, David collapsed to his knees. His breath came heavy, his body drenched in sweat. But when he raised his head, his eyes glowed like the elder's. His movements were steady, powerful. His voice, when he spoke, was calm yet filled with strength. I feel it. I understand. The elder bowed his head slightly. Then the protector rises. But the moment of peace didn't last. The ship shook violently as alarms blared louder. Outside, through the viewport, a massive fleet appeared, warships stretching across the stars, their weapons glowing. David's heart raced. They found us. The elder's gaze was steady. Yes, and they will not stop. The galaxy is watching you now, David. Your choice has already changed everything. David clenched his fists, feeling the energy burning in his veins. Fear still lived inside him, but it no longer ruled him. For the first time in his life, he wasn't running from his destiny. He was running toward it. The elder placed a hand on his shoulder once more. Prepare yourself. The true battle begins now. David turned to the stars, the glowing fleet drawing closer. His transformation was complete. He was no longer a forgotten worker of Outpost 9. He was the protector, the bridge between species, the spark that would decide the fate of countless worlds. And as the alien fleet descended, David whispered to himself, his voice steady, his eyes burning with new light, "Let them come.